I've got a folder here called Adobe Stock I just chucked on the desktop. Feel free to come have a play with these. I've got a couple of videos, just, people walking. This one might be fun to play with if you want to experiment with doing little tippy taps with, like, I don't know how you do that, but that'd be fun to play around with. I'll just keep it simple and just do this shot right here. Now you could start thinking about like what sounds you might want. Grass footsteps is very obvious. You might want maybe some denim rubbing into each other, like kind of like that kind of sound. That wasn't actually denim. But yeah, I might actually rub my pants a little bit and see if I can get that kind of sound. But mostly it's the footsteps we're after. So let's kick this off. So Pro Tools, we want to open up Pro Tools. I created a little shortcut here. The password for this computer is $WORD, which is just the word password with dollar signs instead of S's. And the user is either going to be local user or local admin. So feel free to try both and see which one lets you in. All right, so I'm going to go to Pro Tools by just double clicking. Now the files that you want should probably be pretty small. The video files that you bring in should probably be pretty small for Foley recording. Or even just video, any kind of video stuff that you're doing, because Pro Tools is an audio software, so it needs something pretty small. So you can see that these are the files I originally had, which were quite large. They were also 4K size resolution. I compressed them to something very, very small, like standard definition, which is about 1024 by 576. But anything small should work. Alrighty, so now it's asking me for a project name because we're in Create. We could also choose to open one, but let's create a project. Our project's going to be called Grass Film or whatever, because it's a film all about a girl walking in grass. It's going to the student work folder, which is great, and it's going to create inside this folder a folder called Grass Film, which is perfect. The important things to remember here is just make sure this is on 24-bit. 16 bits probably a bit too low. This is kind of your quality setting. 32 is probably too big for you to really notice any difference. So 24 is a good medium. I do everything in 24. It's very standard. Sample rate is 48. That's also incredibly standard. Musicians usually play around with other numbers, but for video, you always stick to 48. Sometimes if you'll bring in some music and your music track might be 44, but that gets converted to 48. So just, yeah, stick to 48. Let's go create and see what that does. Woo, cool. Let's go back to, let's just import that video now. So file, import video. Give it a second. Go to desktop. Go to, now, personally what I would do is I would actually copy that video file and have your video file into that grass film thing. So I'd put the video, oh, there you've got a folder called video files. So that's probably where you should be putting your video file. I'm not going to, just because I want this video file to be shared with everybody else. So I'm just going to keep it in this Adobe stock folder in case somebody else wants to have a little play. Click on open. Okay, so now it asks us where we want the video to start from. Start is pretty common, so I'm going to go start. I don't even know what other options there are. Don't care. All right, and there's our shot. Of course, if this is a video piece, your video will probably be a little bit longer than this, like 5 or 10 seconds, but this is what we've got. And also a window that's here just popped up on my other screen. If you've got two screens, you'll be able to put this on a different screen, but I'll just keep it here so you can see. Window and then video is where you can find this. So if that window did not open up, you could go window and video, because sometimes that video just closes, that this window closes and you just have to find it again. All right. Now let me just explain zooming. I think this plus will let me zoom in. Yep. So over here, down here, you can see this little plus and minus. That lets you zoom in and out of your timeline. I personally use the shortcuts T and R because they're just a little bit faster than going all the way down here. If the T and R aren't working, just make sure this little yellow button is turned on. This yellow button is where do you want your keyboard shortcuts to be activated. So right now this is saying I want the keyboard shortcuts to affect this window. Whereas if I had this one activated, for instance, now when I press T and R, it's going to do T and R to whatever shortcuts T and R does to this particular window. I don't know any shortcuts for any window besides this one, so I'm just going to stick to that. All right, so the only tool that I personally use, let me first show you how to record. So the first thing I'll do is go track, because we need to record it to a track. This is a video track, which isn't really useful. So we need to go track, new, to create a new track. You can choose how many tracks to create. You know, if you're just starting out and you know you're going to have 6 tracks, you might as well just type in like 6. But we'll just, you know what, I'll do it. Why not? 2 tracks. Mono or stereo, this depends usually on your microphone. The microphones we have here are are mono, so we're just going to keep it as mono. If you've got a stereo mic, feel free to use that. And then what do you want to call it? Let's call this Grass Walk. Hit OK, create. And created 2, Grass Walk 1 and Grass Walk 2. I might just rename this by double clicking and call this Jeans. Okay, so now I've got my 2 tracks. Personally, I would actually do this only one by one. I just wanted to show you that you could create 2 at a time. All right, and now we've got your input 1. This is which microphone it's going to be taking. So over here, because I created 2 at a time, it actually changed this to input 2, which is microphone 2. This is kind of cool because it means if you have like 10 microphones, you could say I want to create 10 tracks and it will automatically create 10 tracks with the right microphones assigned to them. But we only have 1 microphone. I'm going to be using 1 at a time. So I'll just change this back to input 1 by clicking it and going interface input 1. So they should say input 1. That's the microphone that we have in the little recording booth. All right. So now let's say I want to record the clip to all of this bit, so I could select it all. The way you select, I might as well just show you this tool now, is this 3-in-1 tool. So to select, you actually want to use this tool over here, which can select things. To move something, you want to use this tool, which lets you move things like that. And this one will let you trim things like this. I don't know if you could do it for video. So yeah, but that would trim it. I'll show you what that looks like in a different tool once I create audio. So I personally don't like going back and forth to these 3 because I use all these 3 all the time. So what I do is I click up here, which selects all 3 of them. So now we've got a 3-in-1 tool. What that means is I can have my selection tool, which is the little eye symbol you can see, if I have my mouse just above the top half. So sorry, just above the center point of this timeline clip. So I could just select like that. Once you see that little eye symbol, very useful. If you move the eye symbol a little bit lower to the bottom half, you'll see now it turns into that hand tool, which lets you move. So if you want to move something, you just go to the bottom. If you want to select something, you go to the top. And then at the edge, that's where you could just trim as well. Again, you can't do it just because it's a video file. So let's record. So you just go over this top half. Well, see, this is the hand tool. You want to go to that eye tool. You want to select the area. And then you want to hit record and play. But it's not going to work. I'll show you why. Play. It says no tracks are record enabled. It needs to know which track to record to. Like, so is it going to record to Grass Walk or Jeans? So we want to say Grass Walk by clicking on this little record button. You can technically select multiple layers to record at the same time. We're just going to do one by one. Alrighty, so now we will hit the record button and press play. And now it's recording in the other room. I'm not in the other room now, so it's not going to really do much. So let's let me bring the microphone in. I just need to make sure I put the USB interface on input. I'll definitely make sure the sound volume is down for my monitor. Put that all the way at the bottom. And make sure my levels for the microphones are set. And now I could press, make sure it's record enabled, record, and then press play. Hold on, let me see if I could do this. And okay, now I could stop it. And now to listen to it, I can take the USB interface back to USB and bring the volume up so I can hear it. And let's see what that sounds like. Yeah, I think that's good enough for this. If I want now, I could also record the genes by selecting it and doing the genes as well. Now, I'll show you a more advanced technique that I like to do. Now, this is a very subjective thing. It's up to you if you want to use this tool. You do not have to. But let's show you what it looks like. So, over here, we've been pressing record, and the record button just looks like a dot. If you right-click, you will see a loop. This lets you loop record. When you loop record, it will create multiple takes and let you record multiple takes all in one, which is pretty handy sometimes. So let's go loop record, and I'll just make a smaller bit right now, like this, and record and press play. Hold on. And this will be just the genes, I guess. So let's get this out of the way. And I'm just going to rub my genes kind of together. Here we go. Oh, wait. I need to set the USB interface volume down, USB to input, and volume up on the mic. All right, here we go. And need to remember to put it on loop record. Sorry, on record enable. This is track 1, track 2, track 3, and take 4. And I'll stop it here. So what this does is it records all the takes that I've done. But you're probably wondering where they are. It doesn't actually create them on different tracks. It only creates one track because I'm only trying to record one sound. So it only is going to play one sound at a time, which is fantastic. So what I can do is, instead of this wave thing, you can click on this and get a few different options. Playlists is what creates the different takes. So if I go to playlists, now I can see my multiple takes, and you can see they're numbered. So this is 1, 2, 3, and this is 4. The reason 4 is up here is because this is the last take I've done. So it assumes that the last take is the best take, because otherwise, why would you keep recording? You know, if number 2 is the best take, why am I doing number 3 and 4? But I personally don't like to have that straight up there to begin with. So I click and drag it and move it down here. That yellow symbol means that it's going to be straight. You can hold down Control also to make sure it's straight. So now I've got my 4 takes. Up here, this is what's going to be listened to. This is what's going to be actually heard. So if I press play now, you're not going to hear it. You're just going to hear this track up there. But what you could do is you could press solo if you want to listen to, let's say, this Genes 01. Let's go take the monitor back to USB, bring the volume up. This is track 1. And you can hear me saying this is track 1. That's because I was trying to make sure that you understood what's happening. But of course you wouldn't normally do that. And I could listen to track 2. Track 2. Oh, so you could say, wow, track 2 is the best one. I'm going to use track 2. So what you could do is just move this up here. There you go. But personally, I like to have my takes all recorded like this and all nice and neat. And then up here is kind of like my play around area where I can kind of put bits and pieces here and there, so that I'm not losing what I've got originally. So what you could do is you could go, wow, the track 2 is great. So I'll select this one and just press this little arrow, and that promotes it up to the top. It's essentially copy pasting it up here. And now it's going to play. If I turn that solo off and turn this solo on, you'll hear that. What this solo button's doing is it's letting us listen to just this track. Whereas if I turn this off, we'll be hearing this track, but also this track up here. So it's essentially the exact same as just muting this particular one because it's the only other one available. So this is everything. Track 2. Nice. So you could also decide that you don't like track 2, the beginning of track 2. You might want the beginning of track 3 by soloing it and listening to it and going, this track's the best. So what you could do is go solo, spacebar. Yeah, there you go. Oh, okay. So this is definitely the best bit. So you could select this bit now and promote that bit, and now you've got the beginning of track 3, or take 3, or playlist 3, and number 4 is and then it goes to the end of number 2. So yeah, you don't have to do it this way with playlists. And then once you're done, of course, you could just go to waveform. You don't have to go back to waveform, but it's a lot neater if you go back to waveform because that's what you've selected. So you don't have to use playlists at all. I just think they're really, really handy. Otherwise, if you wanted to do a second take and not get rid of your first take, you might have to create a new track and call that take 2, and then you have to mute that track, and it can get a bit messier. Awesome. So the only other thing I'll show you is volume control. So you can lower the volume by this little 0 dB thing. So if I click and drag on this, you can make it really loud or really low, up to you. So you can move this up and down, and yeah. Another thing that could be handy is fading out. If you want to fade a sound out, you just bring your cursor to this top right corner, and then you can fade it out. Or if you want to fade something in, same top left corner. Now it fades in and then out. Usually you want to do this so that it's a nice transition into the sound and out of the sound. The only other thing that's worth mentioning is how to break a clip. So you could break a clip. So let's say you want this bit here to be lower volume. There are other ways that you could do this. Feel free to look into it. I'll just show you the most basic way. The most basic way is to make sure that it's a separate clip, and by doing that, you just select the area that you want to cut, and then do Command E. And that will break it, and then you can bring the volume down or bring the volume up, depending on what you're trying to do. There you go. It's a bit loud. Yeah, there you go. And then once you're done, you want to export. You've done your entire audio. You've moved things around. You've brought volumes up and down. You've fixed things that it look a lot more complicated. You can go. Of course, it won't look like that. I'm just trying to give you an example of what things would look like. You can go File, Export, and you could export selected tracks as new session. That's not what I want. Sorry, you can go File and Bounce Mix. That is your exporting option, and that will mix everything for you and be wonderful. There's a lot more to it than this, but this is a good intro. So now we could choose what we want to export it. File is WAV is probably the best. You could choose AIFF if you want. They're both very similar. Don't worry about MP3. That's low quality. These two are video options, so theoretically you can export the video here, but the video that you imported is probably lower quality than your original video files. So I would take this audio and bring it into your Premiere Pro back, or whatever you're editing in. Grass Film, let's call this Grass Film Audio Final. And where do you want to go? Just to your bounced files. Awesome, and bounce. Might take a minute, or a second. And then let's go back to the desktop, the student work folder, the grass film folder we created, bounced files, and there's your final output. So this is the file that you could take into Premiere or whatever you edited your video in. Sweet. Well, hopefully that helped give you a little bit of an idea of how to use Pro Tools.